Imagine a world where your new smartphone costs twice as much and half of its apps stop working. Sounds like science fiction? It could be our future if the global economy falls apart. For decades, the world was heading in one direction, toward integration. Products from China, technologies from Silicon Valley, cheap electronics available on every shelf. Globalization made everything cheaper, faster, and more accessible. But that order is now coming to an end. The United States and China, the world's two greatest powers, are building economic walls. They're breaking off cooperation, imposing sanctions, creating separate supply chains. This isn't a temporary storm. This phenomenon has a name: decoupling, the separation of economies. Is this really the end of the globalization we know, or just the beginning of a new era? In this episode, I'll show how decoupling affects our lives, why our shopping is getting more expensive, and whether the world faces economic chaos. Decoupling is simply an economic divorce. The world's two greatest powers, the United States and China, are trying to become independent of each other. Less shared trade, fewer shared technologies, separate markets. Each is building its own factories, its own systems, its own alliances. It's like a breakup where neither side wants to give up the kitchen or the TV. Why is this happening? It's about politics and security. The United States doesn't want its technologies ending up in Beijing's hands. They impose sanctions on Chinese companies like Huawei, restrict the sale of advanced chips. The pandemic showed that too much dependence on one country can paralyze the whole world. Once, China produced 90% of the world's smartphones. Today, the United States is investing over $50 billion to produce them domestically. But here's the question. Can you really cut off a country that produces 30% of everything we buy? From clothes to electronics. Can the world truly live without China? Decoupling isn't just a political slogan. These are real decisions that are already changing the global economy. The United States bans the export of modern chips to China. The European Union imposes tariffs on Chinese electric cars to protect its own industry. And that's just the beginning. Big corporations are also changing their strategies. Instead of investing in cheap China, they choose countries that are friendly politically. This phenomenon is called friendshoring. Apple is moving production from China to India and Vietnam. Intel is building new factories in Europe and the United States. Companies no longer want to risk political tensions destroying their supply chains. But such independence comes at a cost. New factories are expensive, logistics are harder, and labor is pricier than in China. That's why your new iPhone 16 will cost more, not because it has a better battery, but because it wasn't assembled in a Chinese factory. Meanwhile, China isn't standing still. It's investing billions of dollars in developing its own technologies. The company SMIC produces domestic chips. Beijing is strengthening trade with BRICS countries, Brazil, India, Russia, and South Africa. It's building an alternative system, independent of the West. Taiwan, through the company TSMC, currently supplies 60% of the world's chips. And the United States has launched a special CHIPS Act worth $52 billion to build its own production base. The question is, can the West really live without China? And can China manage without the West? More and more signs suggest that trying to separate these two worlds will change the rules of the game for everyone. The separation of economies doesn't happen in a vacuum. The effects of decoupling are felt by everyone, not just politicians, but ordinary people too, and very directly. Prices are rising. Electronics, clothes, cars, everything is getting more expensive. Why? Because production in China was cheap. Now, as companies move factories to India, Mexico, or Europe, costs go up, and so do prices in stores. Want to buy a cheap electric car from China, like BYD? Forget it. EU tariffs are designed to effectively block it, and that means less competition, and more expensive alternatives. The changes also affect security. Less dependence on China means more control over critical technologies, but also greater risks. Cyber wars, espionage, and competition for rare resources like lithium, cobalt, or neodymium could escalate conflicts between superpowers. In the new world, every country will want to have everything at home. This also stirs social tensions. More and more companies choose suppliers from countries that are politically similar. It's not always the best economic choice, but it's more patriotic. Nationalist sentiments are growing. Globalization, which for years brought people together, is now dividing them.
On the other hand, it's also an opportunity. New factories, new jobs, bigger local investments, but there's one question everyone must ask themselves. Are we ready to pay more for products to have greater independence? And will it really pay off? Because decoupling isn't just a political slogan. It's your bills at the store, your energy costs, and the price of your new phone. Is this the end of globalization? Or just its new version? In the most pessimistic scenario, the world splits into two camps. On one side, the West, the United States, the European Union, and their allies. On the other, China, Russia, and BRICS countries. Two technological systems emerge, two internets, two worlds that talk to each other less and less. Companies that operate globally today will have to choose either or. But there's another vision. The world doesn't fall apart, it shifts. Globalization doesn't disappear, it changes direction. Instead of one giant factory in China, we have many smaller ones in India, Mexico, or Vietnam. New trade alliances emerge, more local but still interconnected. Some challenges are too big to tackle in isolation. Pandemics, climate change, energy crises. These problems don't respect borders. An example? China produces over 80% of the world's solar panels. If the world wants green energy, it can't completely cut itself off from Beijing. And so the question is, does decoupling mean a new wall? Or perhaps a foundation for a more balanced world? Because the future of the global economy isn't written yet, but the decisions we make today will shape it for decades. Decoupling isn't a passing trend or a political whim. It's a deep change reshaping the world before our eyes. Products that were once cheap and widely available are getting more expensive. Moving factories from China to India or Mexico is costly and time-consuming. But it's not just about prices. It's about security, influence, and above all, who will rule the technological and economic world. The globalization we've known for the last 3 decades is coming to an end. But it's not disappearing entirely, it's evolving. Instead of one giant network, we're seeing more smaller regional systems. Instead of open exchange, selective partnerships. Instead of shared production, national priorities. Some countries will gain, others will lose, and we'll all feel it in our wallets. Our bills will be higher, electronics more expensive, and product choices smaller. But perhaps we'll gain something more: resilience, stability, and greater control over what we buy and from whom. Decoupling is a high-stakes game, a struggle for influence, data, and supply chains, but also for values. Are we ready to pay more for independence? Will the world choose division or common rules of the game? For now, one thing is certain. We are living in the time of the greatest economic change in decades. And the future won't depend only on politicians or corporations, but also on us. On our choices, our money, and our awareness. Because this isn't just a question of prices. It's a question of the direction the world is heading.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you found it interesting, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your support helps us dive deeper into topics like these. See you in the next video.